Hey there, Bible 12. What's up? Here's what we got going on today. In the announcements, you should see that there's the lesson plan that is already posted. We're going to be talking about theosis and how marriage teaches us to persevere. Warm up today. If you haven't already gotten started on it, I want you to go ahead and do that now. Is it ever possible to be free from sin in this life? Can you, as a human, stop sinning? I want you to unpack that idea. Explain your reasoning. Don't just say yes or no, but explain your reasoning in a couple of sentences. All right. After that, watch this screencast, which you are, and then I'll have you do a couple of assignments along the way. You'll revisit that warm-up post, and then you'll go back to, and then you'll have one on Israel and God's relationship. There's a video that's attached to an assignment. And then we'll close with some chapter summary notes. So let's get into it. If you don't remember, this is a threaded discussion week because it's not a verse quiz week. So since it's a threaded discussion week, that means by Friday you need to have your threaded discussion done. It's hopefully timely and relevant because it has to do with both coronavirus and marriage. So here's what we got going on. You're going to do that original post. Is it ever free? Is it ever possible to be free from sin in this life? And what I've discovered is the default answer for most Christians is no. I don't know, maybe you guys will prove me wrong. Maybe you guys will see something different. But I found that most of the time Christians will say, no, it's not possible to be free from sin in this life. So let me unpack some ideas for you. Theoretically, last year you probably learned about a little old thing called sanctification if you were in the Romans class. That's one of those big buzzwords. Sanctification, justification, salvation, all of the shuns that you're going to pick up in a class like Romans. Now, the word sanctification, simply put, can be illustrated by this little image here of a toothbrush cleaning a shoe. In one way, sanctification is the cleaning up of something. It's ridding someone of sin, which is like kind of why we talk about we talked about the last chapter, chapter 7, being the cleansing of marriage. So in a way, sanctification is the process of cleansing. It's the cleaning out of sin. But in another way, sanctification in its most literal sense is also represented by this picture, because this toothbrush has been sanctified. Sanctification points to holiness, and holiness means to be set apart. If something is set apart, it means that it is for that purpose. It is for that use. It is for... So when God says that you are a people who are holy unto me, that means they are people who are set apart for God. So in the same way that, like, this has a double meaning. One is that the process of sanctification looks like this, like the cleaning up of a dirty old shoe, getting rid of that dirt and those smudges and the grime. But also sanctification is like this toothbrush. This toothbrush has been sanctified for the purpose of shoe cleaning. It has been set apart for that purpose, so that it is no longer able to be used for brushing teeth and whatnot. You could, but that's gross. It has been sanctified. It has been set apart for me and my shoe cleaning purposes, or whoever is cleaning this shoe. Cool. Now, sanctification, that being that, has been interpreted a bunch of different ways by different people in the church. And so, yes, it's the process of becoming holy, getting cleaned up, and being set apart. Now, depending on the denomination you come from, it's going to look a little different. So the Anglicans say it's a process of working toward holiness. So sanctification is a process, and holiness is the end goal. Calvinists would say that humans are like totally depraved, and so the only sanctification we experience in this life is by Christ's merits and by the Spirit. So we are only sanctified because of what Christ does, and they're like, our process in this is not really of consequence. It's what the Spirit has done in us and through us, and what Christ has done for us. The Eastern Orthodox believes in this thing called theosis, which means that you actually take on divine attributes in the process of sanctification. Catholics would say sanctification is a close union with God. which causes holiness from being close to God. And then the Methodist Church, which is kind of linked to our school's tradition, the Wesleyan tradition, would say that Christ cleanses us from original sin. That would be kind of like the Calvinist part of it. And then through the grace of God, we become holy. Like there's like a process to it as well. So it's like a merging of the Anglican and the Calvinist view that Christ puts his righteousness on us and cleans us, but then that righteousness that he puts on us then is lived out by us as we live our lives. What we're going to look at really quickly in light of the question that I asked in the beginning of class, is it possible to be free from sin, is we're going to look at this concept called theosis, the taking on of divine attributes, because in 2 Peter 1:4, we get this. It's toward the beginning of the letter. It's his intro before verse 3. He's just doing the hello thing. So if you're wondering about context, that's the context. His divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. Through these, he has given us his very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. So, if we're going by scripture, guys, is it possible? Maybe we can phrase it differently. Is it possible to escape the corruption of the world caused by evil desires? This is the Blue's Clues moment where you say yes, because it's right there in the text. It is possible because through those promises, we can participate in the divine nature. Through those promises, we can escape the corruption of the world caused by evil desires. What I have found is that oftentimes when people say it is impossible to escape sin, it is impossible to stop sinning, I find that usually it's because people don't want to try, right? That I think that sometimes people get so caught up in sin, so trapped by sin, that they give up, right? And they say, you know what? I'm never going to overcome this thing. This is just what it is. Good thing I've got salvation through Jesus. And don't get me wrong, salvation through Jesus comes through grace, which means that you do not have to do anything to be saved by Jesus. And the Calvinists do have it right in that he does, by his Spirit, put his righteousness onto you so you can have relationship with God. But it does not end there. There is a process of sanctification that gets taken on where the Spirit empowers you to actually participate in the divine nature and to escape the corruption of the world, where you actually do have, like, look at verse 3. He's given us everything we need for a godly life. So whatever voice you have in your head that says it's impossible for me to overcome this sin, the darkness is too great, I cannot overcome it, false. The creator of the universe is on your side, who put himself in the flesh to show you how to live the truly human redeemed life. And he invites us not only into relationship with him, but probably one of the strangest Christian mysteries is this, that you may participate in the divine nature. If you read through the book of John, Jesus kind of rambles on for a while toward the end of his life about this, that he and the Father are one, and he invites us into that relationship where we get to experience oneness with the creator of the universe. Now, this does not mean that we become God, but there's a unity that comes from being in step with God, that comes from being sanctified to the point where we choose and do the things that God would want us to do in this life. And so, at least according to scripture, it is possible to escape sin. Now, we can get into the crazy Greek, and there's actually a few different ways of expressing what sin is. And I've had some good pushback from students in the past that say, okay, I can escape one type of sin but not another, and those two types would be hamartia is the Greek word that it's like an archery term, where if I'm aiming at a target, imagine I'm aiming at you and you're the target. Hamartia is if I'm aiming for you and then the arrow goes off and misses you, it misses the mark. Even if I was aiming for the mark, it does not hit the mark. That is hamartia. But then there's another type of sin, which sometimes is interpreted as transgression or iniquity, where it's not that I'm trying to aim at the target and I miss and it like goes errant, but rather I'm aiming not for the target anymore and I try to aim for someone else. Or I intentionally sin. Um, and I would venture to say that there's a good solid case for the fact that we can give up this kind of sin, where we aim at the target that is not what God has for us. I think that there is a good case to be made that it may be in a fallen world, it may be impossible to truly escape like missing the mark sometimes. But I do think it's possible to stop aiming for other things. Um, like because no matter how sanctified we become, if we participate in the world, we're bound to probably even unintentionally participate in systems of injustice and brokenness. And so, notice that like this topic, the further you dig, like there's layers upon layers upon layers of what these terms even can mean. And so I want you now to go back to that warm-up post and reply to your original post and add some nuance. Have you changed your opinion? Are there other layers there that you'd like to explain a little bit further? If nothing changed, if you already believed this or already believed a lot of things, or maybe even what I've said to you is totally unconvincing, explain why. So go back to your original warm-up post, find it, and reply to yourself to explain maybe what has changed about your opinion or what nuance is lacking from your opinion. Ready, go do that. Cool. The next thing that you're going to do is in assignments, there is an assignment in the homework classwork section called God and Israel. And I want you to watch that video about the history of Israel. It's like the whole Old Testament in a video. And I want you to imagine Israel and God as a married couple. And I want you to describe what their relationship looks like. Because, actually, before the because, pause and do that assignment now. Okay, here's the because. Because marriage is like Israel and God's relationship. God and Israel's relationship is like marriage. And one of the things that you hopefully notice is that God doesn't give up, right? No matter how long the story goes, God continues to persevere. And this is one of the things that marriage teaches us. If we go through that entire story of the Bible, you'll notice the first 12 chapters are a constant downward spiral of human sin multiplying. And then God tries this new thing with Abraham, and it's like, oh my gosh, maybe it'll get better. Wait, we're enslaved. And then the people of God get rescued, and it's like, okay, maybe it'll get better. And then hooray, there is a generation that takes the promised land. And then the book of Judges is another downward spiral. Person after person after person, that becomes worse and worse and worse. By the end of the book of Judges, it's probably the darkest section of scripture. And then we're like, okay, well, the last judge we have is Samuel. Maybe through a king it can get better. And we have King Saul, and then we have King David. And we're like, hooray, King David, now we're on our way up. But then the end of David's life is tragic. And there's all sorts of terrible stuff that happens in David's household. And then the rest of the kings of Israel, another downward spiral. And so despite all of the downs, lots of downs and slight ups, God sticks with Israel, right? And if we're in this process of pursuing holiness, then what marriage provides us the opportunity to do is to grow the character of God, to grow that same perseverance that God has, so that we can become more like Him. Because there are going to be downtimes. There are going to be times when it's not ideal, where things are difficult, where people are hurt in the process. But then marriage provides us the environment in which we can practice being like God by persevering. Before I have you do your exit ticket, I wanted to read this quote. It's from the Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a good Russian artist. Let me set up this quote a little, though. Madame Holikov is talking to Alyosha, who is one of the main characters of the book, and he is a priest, or he's pledged to be a priest. He is studying in one of the monastic orders, And Madame Holikov, she comes in um, for advice. And she says this: the more I love humanity in general, the less I love man in particular. In my dreams, I often make plans for the service of humanity, and perhaps I might actually face crucifixion if it were suddenly necessary. Yet I am incapable of living in the same room with anyone for 2 days together. I know from experience, as soon as anyone is near me, his personality disturbs me and restricts my freedom. In 24 hours, I begin to hate the best of men. One because he's too long over his dinner, another because he has a cold and keeps blowing his nose. I become hostile to people the moment they come close to me, but it has always happened that the more I hate men individually, the more I love humanity. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because sometimes I think that we think of ourselves as loving, persevering people, as holy human beings in general, kind of like Madame Holikov loves people in general. But the true test to see if you are loving, the true test to see if you do persevere, is when you are in a relationship, when that annoying person is in the same house with you, when you are, hypothetical situation here, when you are stuck in a house for 24 hours a day, constantly for a few weeks with other people, are you still a loving person? Because it's your behaviors that's going to reveal whether or not you're a loving person. It's going to be your behaviors to see whether or not you can persevere in that love and in pursuing having a healthy relationship with those other humans. And so, in light of that, I want you to check yourself. Do a Madame Holikov check and think, do I love people in general, or do I actually love real people? And then for closing, this is your exit ticket for class. It's chapter 8. Your summary is to highlight 3 important things you noticed, and then star the thesis. It's McKinsey's summary. I believe it's called Chapter 8 Summary Notes, and you should be able to find it in your homework classwork section. So if we go back to our lesson plans, by this point, around 12:30, I'll be in the Zoom room just to hang out. But Journal 4 should be done by Friday. I think I clued you in on that in the last digital session. And submit your chapter summaries digitally if it's your week. I think soon it's everyone's week. So if you haven't turned it in yet, I'm going to start going through those. And then threaded discussion 7 is due this Friday. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest. Oh, sorry, one more thing. One quick announcement. I'm not sure if you noticed this or not, but just in case you haven't, oftentimes in the assignments, especially if it's not a discussion, I'll let you submit either a text entry box or a file upload. Because if you're tired of typing into a text box, you can also write on paper, take a picture, and upload that file as like a JPEG or whatever it is that your phone or camera takes. So yeah, that's always an option for the regular classwork assignments. Okay, that's it. Have a wonderful day.